Hello fleet, today I just wanted to bring you some gameplay and also provide you with an overview of the Tier 7 American premium cruiser, the Atlanta. The Atlanta is unlike any of the other cruisers at her tier. She doesn't pack the regular cruiser caliber guns, instead opting for a lot of rapid fire destroyer caliber guns. Now, because the Atlanta has these destroyer caliber guns, she's not really able to penetrate many of the heavily armored targets like battleships, but she can absolutely rip lightly armored ships apart. So if you're in a destroyer and you run up against an Atlanta, start praying to the Navy gods because you are in a lot of trouble. The Atlanta is able to fire 14 5-inch shells every 5 seconds. Now if you ripple fire the guns, you can essentially create a machine gun torrent of shells that you can rain upon your enemies. However, the Atlanta does have its weaknesses. The guns have an extraordinarily short range, only 11 kilometers, and they're very easily destroyed by enemy gunfire. There have been times where I've lost so many guns in the Atlanta, I had no other choice but just to ram the nearest enemy target. So the Atlanta certainly has its weaknesses when it comes to its armament. But the Atlanta is also unique in the sense that at tier 7, she doesn't have a scout. But on the other hand, she has torpedoes, which also makes her very unique in the higher tier American cruisers. This allows the Atlanta to be at times very flexible because it allows her to engage something like a battleship and be able to actually do crippling amounts of damage where other cruisers, well, maybe that option doesn't exist for them. But at the same time, not having a scout can also be problematic because you can't see things. And for example, one of the Atlanta's strengths is to hunt destroyers, but when you don't have a scout plane, it's quite hard to do. Now, the Atlanta is also pretty fast, but it isn't very good at turning, so keep that in mind if you ever decide to get her. Durability wise, she's also not very good, with very thin armor, and is quite vulnerable to fire from larger caliber guns. Anyways, let's quickly move on to this battle. I'm on Islands of Ice, and I'm in my Atlanta, and I've decided to go to the A cap. I went to the A cap because this is actually where a lot of destroyers like to go at the beginning of the game in order to cap this point quickly. So I'm just hoping that I'm able to go in there with my guns, and I'm able to maybe find a couple of destroyers and just tear them a new one. So I'm looking around, and oh, there's a destroyer in the smoke that I saw earlier going to the smoke, but just take a look how quickly this destroyer goes down to gunfire. It's very fast. Just pop out, and you know, in like 3 salvos the destroyer goes under the water. So that's the Atlanta's strength, is basically being this kind of destroyer hunter. Oh, by the way, her guns also turn extremely quickly, which allows me to very quickly turn my guns around and just launch one quick salvo to finish off that cruiser. But again, I'm looking around, just looking for the nearest targets. Oh, another destroyer popped up. Take a look at this. Just love the rate of fire on this thing, which is one of the big things going for the Atlanta, is that rate of fire. She's able to really make little ships like destroyers pay for coming out to engage you, because if they can't hit their torpedoes on you, if their torpedoes are reloading, you pretty much have free reign to finish them off quickly. In their case, there's another destroyer. But that battle was pretty short, and I also primarily dealt with only destroyers at close range, so you're not really able to get a full sense of the Atlanta's strengths and limitations. So let's take a look at a more complete battle. So here I am on fault lines, and I am in my Atlanta, and if you look at the map closely, my entire team, excluding our 2 carriers, has pretty much headed in one direction. By doing this, our team has completely opened up one of our flanks for the enemy team, that they can come down uncontested. So instead of continuing my mission, which was originally to escort one of our battleships, I've now decided to actually turn around and come here in this direction to contest the 1-2-3 line. And hopefully I'm able to stop any kind of push onto our cap, and that we won't lose by getting capped in the first few minutes of the game. Now I know from looking at my map earlier that there's probably at least 1 to 2 cruisers in this area, as well as maybe a destroyer or so. And there we go, one of the destroyers has popped up, the USS Sims. Now the Sims, by the way, is a fantastic destroyer. It's very fast, goes 39 knots, among one of the fastest destroyers in the game, just short of the Shimakaze, I think, although I think they're actually pretty close in terms of speed, maybe a point something knot difference. But just take a look at what the Atlanta's rate of fire and just the sheer number of shells it's capable of doing. I'm able to basically pepper the Sims with so many shells that it can't do anything except turn around and run away. Of course, once the destroyer shows you a very small profile, makes it extremely difficult to hit. And of course, with 5-inch guns, even when you do hit, you don't do a lot of damage per shell. It does really have to depend on the sheer weight of fire that you're able to throw in that direction. But this destroyer is definitely running away. It's popped its smoke, and it pretty much shows that it's no longer wanting to fight. So instead, at this time, I'm turning my attention to the next big target that's coming into range, that Kitakami over there. Now the Kitakami is another one of those premium ships. It's interesting in the sense that it's got a lot of torpedoes and it can fire a whole bucket load of torpedoes. But the torpedoes go 10 kilometers, but the Kitakami can be spotted a little bit before that. Now I know that by looking at the distance at the a little bit earlier on, that the Kitakami had already entered that 10-kilometer distance where it can launch torpedoes. And of course now you seeing it turn away means that it no longer has torpedoes on one side, which tells you that there's torpedoes on the way. So my job is quickly to turn around and head in the other direction to avoid torpedoes that might be coming my way. This also gives me an opportunity to engage the little destroyer that had managed to slip by and was actually in the process of harassing our carriers. Once again, the Atlanta's rate of fire, as well as the sheer number of shells that it can send downrange, is going to help greatly in this battle, as I'll be landing a couple of nice hits, and I'm essentially going to cripple this destroyer by taking out its engine, and I'm going to take out some of its guns, essentially rendering it helpless, and of course this destroyer becomes a very easy target for my team, and in no time at all, we get to kill it. Now, after killing this destroyer, I'm going to have to turn myself around, and one of the things you're going to notice about the Atlanta is the turn time. I'm already full over, full port rudder right now, and just take a look at this ship turn. Oh dear. The Atlanta is not one of the fastest turning ships in the game, and you're going to find that at times this can be a tiny bit frustrating, especially if you ever are in a map that's a little bit more close quarters. So take Islands of Ice for example. I have this amazing ability to frequently get myself stuck on icebergs. It's kind of become a running joke that every single time I do that, what I'm really doing is I'm searching for penguins on that map. Pretty sure Wargaming has hidden some of those things somewhere on the island as an Easter egg. We just gotta go find it. Anyways, quickly back to this battle. So enemy cruiser is coming in my direction. Now one of the other things you'll notice about the Atlanta's guns, and this could be a good thing and a bad thing at the same time, is the really high arcs that the shells travel when they're trying to hit stuff at long range. Now where is this a good thing? Well, take for example if you're playing on, for example, north, there's places where you can shoot over islands. Well, on those particular maps it could be really helpful. But at the same time, high angle shells do also pose their own unique challenges. One is that they make leading targets quite difficult because you're really having to calculate where the ship will be in however many seconds it takes your shells to basically travel this ridiculously high arc to get there. But at the same time, against certain ships, if you can get through their deck armor, it could be beneficial as well. Okay, anyways, one other thing about the Atlanta. You've noticed that in that engagement, it didn't come out that well. And that's one of the Atlanta's problems. It isn't very durable. It's kind of got a bit of a glass jaw. So when you're playing it, you do have to keep that in mind that you're not driving the toughest ship on the block. You've got to be a little bit more conservative sometimes. Anyways, another thing that I can show you right now is actually the Atlanta's flexibility. The Atlanta is a very good ship if you use it properly. Use their torpedoes properly. Now, mind you, the Atlanta has really short range torpedoes, so don't go launching them from like 10 kilometers away. You're never going to hit anything anyways. Anyhow, okay, let's take a look at this battle again. Kitakami has just launched torps. It's probably going to run away now. I've noticed that there's a battleship, and if you look at the battleship, it seems to be heading down the 4 line. Now, I'm guessing that depending on where my team's ships are and where that battleship is, there's a good chance that this battleship might try to come out at the bottom of the island at around F5. Now, if that battleship comes to that point, I should be able to engage with torpedoes. But of course, first I have a bigger problem. There's actually a destroyer here. The one that I was hitting earlier with 400 health left, it's come back for some more. But of course, here's the thing I didn't understand about this destroyer. There's fighters right above your head that spotted you. Why did you actually try to make a move on me? Because once you come out, I mean, I had my guns all pointed in this direction, and as an Atlanta, the reload time is so quick that in 2 salvos, I would be able to kill him without having to worry about anything. And that's pretty much what I did, as I was able to land, 2 quick salvos, and before this destroyer was really able to get off any of its torpedoes, I had killed it and started accelerating away. Now remember that battleship from earlier? Well, that battleship did exactly what I thought it would do. It did come down the foreline. The only problem, of course, is it ran into 2 of our cruisers, one of which was a Kitakami. Now, Kitakamis, when they start launching torpedoes at you, the best thing you can do is turn away. And of course, by turning away and turning straight into an island, this battleship has set me up for a perfect torpedo run, because all I have to do is aim at the island, because that's where this battleship will go, and I fire off my torpedoes and wait for them to hit. Now this poor Fuso, really just not the brightest decision to come rushing down that point, because there's just ships that could devastate you in gaps in the island. And of course, there you go. 2 torpedo hits and the Fuso blows up. And this is one of the good things about the Atlanta, is it is really flexible. It does have that ability to use its torpedoes and guns to great effect against a variety of targets. Now that the battleship is dead and we've pretty much cleaned up any kind of ship that might be a threat to our cap, it's time to move up onto their ships. Now they have not a lot of ships left, 2 carriers, a battleship, and 1 remaining Kitakami that has run away really quickly, mind you. But looking at my team, I'm noticing that they're trying to cut off this Kitakami at around E2. Now, if that Kitakami were to spot them, I would assume that the Kitakami would try to turn around. So instead of following my team to E2, I'm actually going to try to cut off this Kitakami's retreat path at around E4, so that even if the Kitakami was to try to turn around and to try to run away, I would be able to engage it with my guns, and hopefully I'd be able to finish it off. During this period of time that I'm just sort of sailing in a straight line, going to, well, a designated point that I'm thinking in my mind, what I'm really doing is just spending my time and I'm watching the movement of their ships. I'm watching where the Kitakami is moving to. I'm predicting where their carriers might be moving to by judging things like their planes and projecting that distance, as well as estimating, from their last point where they could have moved to. These are all things that you have to do when you're really playing this game. You gotta kind of think about it and really be cognizant of where things might go. Now, that earlier prediction that the Kitakami might be turning around has come true. The Kitakami has indeed turned around and is coming back towards me, so this is the correct decision to try to take away the escape path. Although at the same time, if the Kitakami doesn't decide to escape and instead tries to launch their torpedoes on the other side, it should turn back in a direction where on my side there's no torpedoes at all, and it should make a very, very easy kill for me. So as you can see, I have spotted the Kitakami and I'm immediately opening fire, and again, the rate of fire of the Atlanta is going to cripple this Kitakami and should bag me a kill very, very soon. But again, as you can see, there's no torpedoes coming my direction because the Kitakami had just expended all the torpedoes on that side, and the Kitakami's only choice was to try and launch torpedoes towards the other side, in which case he actually managed to get himself a kill, so that was very commendable. Now, once the Kitakami was down, the rest of this battle turns out to be pretty boring, because what I really end up doing is living up to my own name, as all I do is chase these 2 poor carriers around as much as I can. And with the Atlanta's pathetically short-range guns, as well as this ridiculously high arc, well, good luck really dealing with stuff that's trying to run away from you. See that Lexington that's already going at full speed and heading away? I'm actually doing my best to try to, plot a course to try to intercept him, but no matter how hard I try, never really get there. While I do initially manage to get some salvos onto the Saipan, it too eventually turns around and starts heading north and, well, running away from me. And so this battle ends kind of on a low note, as I basically spend the rest of this battle just chasing stuff around. I mean, I do get myself into the cap, and we do actually manage to win the game. Well folks, that's all for this video on the Atlanta. Hopefully I've been able to show you her weaknesses and her strengths. Although, if you do have questions about this particular ship, don't hesitate to ask me in the comment section below. If you enjoy what I'm doing, don't forget to like and subscribe. I wish you all a fantastic day, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all on the high seas.